Hello, I'm Coach Lance Meyer of GRASMinistries, a partner ministry with a City for God. And today, we're painting cats. So I got a black and white photo here, and then I've got a little screen of the colors and stuff. And so we're going to start. Sometimes I start with the backgrounds. Today we're going to start with getting some of those details in to begin with, the little furry areas, and we'll kind of paint over the top of that a little bit and then work on our background. So I've got my handy dandy squirt bottle here, and we're going to get some paint activated. So I'm going to spray that. Okay, that's working really well. Figures, huh? Every time you think you're all set, of course you're not. I've got a plan B, but all right, that one didn't work. Grab another one back here. All right, get a little wet in there. And there we go. There we go. Okay, I'm going to start off with a little bit of a round number 10. This is a Maestro half sable and half synthetic, or at least a synthetic sable. Again, the sable, of course, would be a very high-end brush, very expensive horsehair, and I have one that's kind of imitation and seems to work pretty well. So, all right, let's grab our little water here. And we're going to grab some little bit of cobalt blue today, and we're going to mix just a little bit of orange with that, just to gray it up a little bit. We're putting in kind of the shaded areas a little bit, so we're working with this here. There we go. All right, got a nice little gray going here, grayish blue, and all I'm going to do is start working the areas that are, I'll start with this right here, little fur area, just a little bit of those dark areas. And the nice thing with cobalt blue, and I got to be careful with the orange because that can be a little staining, but kind of got this little brownish color, and I'm just putting that into the shadow areas that I'll paint over the top of with those orangish brown colors, but I'm just trying to create those little fur dark areas a little bit. So I'm just looking at my reference photo, and that's why I like to work black and white, because it really shows where those values are. And although color plays an important role, value trumps it. You need to have the value is more important than the color that you choose. You gotta just look at this. My photo reference doesn't necessarily have how this is. I'm gonna just bring that way a little bit. All I'm doing is just getting where are the darks in the painting. That allows me to kind of start drawing and starting to get a little likeness of the cat as well. And again, a little cobalt blue, a bit of blue, and a little bit of orange, lots of water. Working relatively light today unless I see something that's really dark. Here I'm going to negative space paint a little bit. Try to create the little furries there. There we go. And this brown kind of works its way back up this way toward the eye. And we got a nice little dark kind of coming there. Actually, that's a little light, sorry. That's a little white. Dark right there. Got the edge of the nose. That's actually pretty dark. I'll grab a little bit of a ultramarine blue, just a little more blue. There we go. So all I'm doing, where are the darks? I'm trying to create little furry. I'm just moving my brush so it kind of creates a little fur. One thing you can do is actually add water droplets in there. That'll make a nice effect too. But at this point, I'm just putting in those darks all the way through here. That's pretty dark. I got some nice lights I need to keep. This is kind of a general gray. I'll go right like that. I notice I'm creating little edges of fur. It's dark right back over here by the paw, and then underneath the paw. All the way along here is pretty dark. A dark spot right there. We've got get this in here. This is all gray. Little line there, and then we've got these dark, got a negative space paint, leaving those whites in there for some of that fur, and then we got a real dark right in here. Dark, all the way through here, right up to there. We got a dark kind of working its way, and some fur. I'm just kind of moving it the direction of the fur here a little bit, leaving a lot of white. Just kind of getting those in there a little bit. Darker there, and might finish up my face here too. There we go. This is all kind of grays. Leave some whites. There we go. This is all pretty dark, and then it's kind of gray in through there. And okay, that now you can at least kind of see it's the. Actually, let me get this in there. I'll get the real dark in here too. So lots of blue. A little more orange, lots of blue. I'll darken that up a little more. A little bit of orange. Oh, I got too much orange. There we go. Okay, I'll put the eye in here. Comes down like that. And right here, there's a dark right there. Okay, now already just doing this, you already can see the cat. Okay, that's good. We'll leave that for that. Is there any other real darks? I mean, you got this dark underneath the noise. I'll darken that up a little bit. And then the bottom of the paws is actually pretty dark. I'll do that. And maybe a little more here. This area is a little darker. Once I got those darks, I'll just add those in there quick. There you go. Over here is pretty dark. And then underneath this paw as well. And then I'll start adding water to kind of get this lighter as we go here. Again, just trying to catch which way this fur is moving. We got a nice little dark right there. I got this dark. Just kind of catching a few furry guys this way. A little more, a little darker down maybe over here. And just kind of leaving whites, but not trying to draw every fur, but just kind of getting those in there a little bit. Same thing over here. There we go. So you can see just by doing this, I'm getting in a little bit of value. Looks like I got some pretty good dark right there. Kind of comes up this way. Got a nice dark kind of coming up through this way. And then the fur kind of starts moving. Just feeling that out. Leaving lots of white. But which way is this fur moving? Dark underneath here. This ends up being, for whatever reason, that's pretty light. I'll leave that white for now, and I kind of got a shadow underneath here. Throw a little more shadow right there. Okay, something like that. Okay, now already just doing that, we've got the feel of the cat, right? This is all still pretty light. I'll keep that white for now because we'll darken that in. Okay, then we let that dry. Got just a little more dark down in here. Okay, that's probably good. All right, just doing that. You can see the cat now, right? So, next up is to work on adding those colors in there. So we need to mix up a nice, it's kind of a yellowy brown orange. So we're going to have to play around. We're going to grab a little orange. Actually, I got really excited about the orange. I threw a whole bunch of orange in here. So we're going to have to dull that down. We're going to grab some yellows. Okay, I think that's actually getting closer to the color. And then when you add a little blue to it, I'll grab a little bit of that cobalt blue, which will brown it up a little more. And we're getting close to the color here. Let me move that for just a second so you can see it. There's my color. Now that's pretty, I got a little azo yellow, which will push that a little bit more brown and yellow. So I'm mixing just an orange. Not even sure which one it is. Now you have to be careful with orange because it will dominate. That's why I'm dulling it down a little bit here with the yellow, gold, and then a little bit of blue. Just grab a little cobalt, throw that in there. That'll brown it up. There you go. Now we're going to actually take that and add more water to it, or at least make sure my brush has got lots of water, so it's a little lighter, although it looks pretty good. Yeah, my fur's looking pretty good. Now, key to this is to wet your paper. So I'm just grabbing another brush here and I'm going to start creating little fur. Not going to wet everything, but I'm going to put some water in here because what that will do is make the colors kind of mix a little more, and it will allow for the colors to make look a little bit more like fur. Do that. Put this right there. Just putting a little bit of the areas I know that are light. I'm going to try to keep less color. I'm not going to mess with the nose right now. I'm just adding, again, trying to get the way the fur is moving a little bit, not leaving some dry areas, but throwing some more droplets of water in here. I'm working very quickly, trying to have it kind of move again the way the fur is. I'm using my reference photo as a guide. I'm not trying to paint every single piece of fur. I'm trying to have the colors, paint kind of do that itself a little bit. I got to be careful to keep a white there. There. There we go. And then we're going to grab the other brush. Then we're going to grab this color. And we're going to start putting it, especially in the dark areas. There we go. That's what we want. See how that does that? By adding the water first, we start getting these little furry. And by putting the dark behind it, we get some value in there. So I can just concentrate on putting the color in. Leaving some whites yet, especially where I see lights. I'm not going to mess with the ear. We'll do the ear later. And I'm just putting the colors in there. Trying to move the way that the fur is. There we go. Got a little white spot up here I got to keep. It's a little darker there. Got a couple whites, and then around the eye here is pretty white. Then it does get dark as I come this way. There you go. All right, you can see we're starting to get that feel of the cat. Bring this down just a little bit more. It goes to about there, and then it's pretty light after that. There we go. Gotta work quickly because I want to keep those where it's wet. This is a little lighter, so I'm just going to keep that pretty light. I'll just hit this quickly. A couple areas that are a little darker right there and right there. And then this is pretty dark right there. Got to leave some whites though. It's dark underneath here. And the motion is this way. Not trying to draw every piece of fur. And I'll still come back, but as much as I can get right now, the better and the easier it'll be later. So jerky motions. Trying to create that fur, moving this way a little bit. There's a little darker in here. A little more fur color there. Coming down this way, there's some fur. This is pretty dark in here. Leaving some whites. There you go. The edge of the paper, sometimes I leave a little too white, so I'm gonna get that. Okay, I am gonna leave. This will be kind of too white, but I'm gonna leave that there. And then, yep, we got some darks down here. Just add a little fur there. And it kind of works its way down here, and then it gets a little unsure where it stops and where it starts. So I'll just kind of bring it down this way. I guess the movement is still kind of this way. Okay, you kind of got to feel which way the fur is moving. And get those colors in there quickly. We're going to come back over the top of it one more time. We're leaving some whites. See what that is, but we get the color, at least getting the color in here up to there, a little bit there, and now hit these yet. Color here, working quickly, just trying to get that color in there. It's a little lighter there, a little darker down here. All right, then this, here's where you gotta be a little careful because you want to keep those whites, but the movement is like this. Gotta keep a few whites, and then the fur kind of does this kind of thing. So turkey jerky motions, leaving some lights. It's got some white right down in there. I'm gonna keep that mostly white for now. I can always darken it, and then dark right underneath here, just like that. Okay, now just doing that. I'm just gonna go back any of these areas that I feel like are a little darker. Okay, so now what I'm gonna do is just, I've got it all in there. I'm just going to touch up the areas I think are a little bit darker, just a little more orange, a little bit more blue. Nope, that's a lot. Okay, there's a little shade that's a little darker. Okay, so now all I'm doing is looking, okay, where are the darks? And I'm just going to add a couple more little strokes in there. Kind of works its way to there and down to here. There's a nice dark right there. Nice dark right there, here. All I'm doing is looking where the darks are. And now I will mess a little bit with the eye here. Gotta keep the nice whites, but we got a little strokes like that. I'm negative space painting there. I got a dark kind of working its way through here. And then same thing here. We got a dark. Make sure I get this. This is where I gotta concentrate a little bit here. There's a little dark there, dark there. I'm still not getting every, I'll still come back through this a little bit, but just looking again, that's dark there, and then I do have a nice little dark right there and right here. And then much lighter through here. I'll just dab that a little bit, leave some whites, dark in this corner, right there. Got that dark we've been working on here. So I may hold my brush just a little farther away and start getting a couple of these little individual where I see a little more fur. And it's nice if it's partially wet and partially dry like I got there. Got some darks working through here. There we go. See, it's nice if it's still a little wet and also some dry areas so that it looks like fur. And it moves around a little bit, it looks more natural. Trying to be as allow for just the strokes to do the work themselves. Run out of paint, I gotta add just a little more orange and a little more blue. azo yellow in there. Okay, there we go, nice brown. All right, just gonna kind of flick a few right in here, a couple little fur marks, a couple fur marks there, a couple fur marks here. A little fur there, a little more fur. Just adding these little, where is it dark? I got a little dark right here I missed, right like that. And the more natural I can get it, the better. We'll still come back with the real dark right there. It's a little darker right in here, a little bit right there. Working quickly, but really trying to look at my reference. Where are those dark areas? Trying to keep some whites and trying to create fur. This is all pretty dark in here. You can see some fur marks. Inside there is white, but it's not going to be quite that white. We'll add a little blue in there later, light blue. Got this little crease right here. And I got these longer fur pieces kind of working this way. I gotta keep some whites there, a little white there. Okay, I think we're getting the feel of our cat here, right? Got a little more. Okay, let's take a look at this. All right, I think we're ready for our background actually. Just cleaning up a little bit of that. The more I can get right now, the easier it will be later. Okay, I think that looks pretty good. Obviously this is too white here. This actually is a little smaller too. I'm gonna bring that down a little bit to kind of hit. Maybe have a little fur kind of running its way into that. It's kind of a weird, I think that's the tail coming back in here. Yeah, it's gonna be, okay. All right, now background. Anytime I'm a little bit unsure on a background, I like to use blue and green. Just get the edge of that there, and then same thing up here, just a light brown up there. I'll touch up a little bit inside the ear. I want that edge, there's a little dark edge there. There we go. Okay. That's good. Okay, now, see dark in there. All right, now we're gonna do the background. I'm gonna grab a big 1-inch brush, and I'm just gonna mix up some blue and green. Which I have over here. Got blue green. Imagine that. And just mixing that, and then I'll grab a little bit of that cobalt in there. There we go. It creates a nice blue-green background. And again, if I'm ever not sure on a background, this will at least give you a fighting chance. Alright, so I'm just going to scan up here, because I'm not necessarily trying to get what's in, I'm not trying to, there's not something I want to draw in the background here, so just going to put this in there. I could wet it first, that wouldn't be the worst idea, but I'm just going to throw this color in there, try to create these little furry edges right there, and then just kind of bring this out. Like I said, I could have wet it first, that wouldn't have been the worst idea. Bring this ear in there, boom, boom, boom. Just gonna get this color in here quickly. I'm trying to create a little edge. Here I'm using a little jerky motion to try to create some fur. This is gonna be smoother there. Grab the edge and pull it out. Grab the edge, pull it out, pull it out, pull it out, pull it out there. And I do have to to look and see if there's any whites that need to be preserved there. It does actually look like there's a shadow. Do a little herky-jerky motion right here for some fur. And this is pretty soft. I'll just do that. This is how to get a background in there quickly. I'm not trying to draw a lot of attention to it. And I know if I use blue and green, it'll at least make the colors pop a little more. I think this is actually just whatever, a carpet or whatever. I'm just going to grab a little bit of that color there. And underneath here, I'm going to do the same thing. Just kind of mix that, something like that. Now you could, sometimes I'll push it more blue, more dark. I'm just, right now, just trying to get those colors in there kind of quickly. Is there any whites I need to be aware of? It's hard for me to tell in my reference photo, but I'll just keep that kind of a gray color there. And then I will make a couple decisions where I do want, so we want, you got to decide, is the cat darker? Actually, I think the cat's darker, so we'll keep this light then. Sometimes you'd want to darken that. It feels to me like maybe, yeah, this edge over here, that's what I'll do. I'll darken, you know, maybe about right here, and then kind of working this way. I'll make this edge a little darker, which I kind of did naturally already. A little more blue, a little more green, and we'll just hit that one more time. So maybe from about right here. Get that ear, so yeah, that light ear, so that sticks out a little more. And then you can have these dark and light furs kind of along here. That's why it's kind of nice to have a nice dark. Back up in here. Now you got to think of thirds. Okay, so we got, you'd have to decide, you want, I think we've got our dark corner here. You got a light, light, and a light. So three lights and one dark is kind of what that feels like. And then I'm just going to kind of bring this a little bit into there, so it's a little less obvious. And I'm going to hit that corner one more time with my darkest blue and most green. Boom, right there. We're going to just kind of make a little bit of a dark corner. So we got dark, kind of lights, and then two lighter areas here. So the cat is going to be, now here's where, you know, the only way to do it would be to keep darkening this corner, keep this corner light, and that may actually what I'll end up doing. So this will, yeah, that'll still stand out. This light area will stand out. We got whites here, so maybe it would be better to darken this a little bit. So I am going to do that. So I'm just going to bring this a little more color, a little more shading right there. And then kind of work its way like that. Something like that. A little more blue here. That's good. I got to decide here. It's kind of getting, I'm just going to do a couple of these little furry guys so that could be a little fur in there too. And I'll just run that out this way. I'll tap that so that corner's light. There we go. There's your light corner. A little bit of darkness down here, but I'm not going to get carried away right now. Always come back to that. All right, that makes those white paws stand out more, so that's good. Now I can always darken that some more. I will hit this corner in a little bit. So this does mean, even though I got this white over here, we're going to have to darken down here. So we've got dark, dark, dark. And light. So the light's kind of coming in this way then a little bit. Okay, I think for now, you know, I did get, okay, it is kind of doing some funky stuff there, so maybe I'll just wet that out. There we go. There we go. to the cat. You can even go into the cat in a couple spots. Yeah, especially where that dark is. I'll just pull that there, pull that in there a little bit. Okay, that's probably good. All right, now I'm gonna grab just a little bit of a light blue, and in my whites, I'm gonna use this color as my shadow. So it's a real light blue. So in here we've got, again, a little fur. So I'm gonna bring a little light there, a little light blue. This is, if you're ever painting snow, this is a good technique to use. Your shadows in the snow on white are going to be a light blue. And that's a guide, not a rule. And then I'll put that down, and then I'll do the same thing. We'll just dab that a little bit. This stuff I'm going to grab just a little piece. And I'll just dab it so it looks a little more like fur. There you go. A little darker on the bottom. There we go. Okay, same thing over here. Where are the darks of the, because it's not totally white, it's going to be like that. A little dark there. Try to create a little fur. So the white fur, the shadows, just a little light blue, and then keep those crisp whites. I think that's pretty good. This is where, yeah, using the background, I'd really make that white stand out more is good. Okay, any other, yeah, we got some whites in here. So I'm going to put the little shadows there and keep the rest white. So a little white in here. This is where the nose is pretty light, but I'm going to put the little tiny shadow there. And this is pretty light up here. We got whites in the ears, which we need to keep. We got some nice whites up there, actually. Okay, I think that's this actually. Let's see if I can erase just a little bit. Get this little, yeah, it needs to be just a little more triangle-y there. So I'm just using a little scrub brush. Okay, didn't get rid of all the color, so I'll dab it one more time, lighten it up a little bit. And then the key is you just darken around it so you keep, so the white is, even though it's a little dirty white, it'll still stay pretty white. Okay, now we just got to look at the overall composition. Make sure I'm getting those there, pull those out of there. So it's kind of interesting because I still feel like that background could be a little darker just to make the cat stand out and the whites stand out a little more. But I think we're back to where are the darks. So that's what we're going to do next again. We're going to come back, and now I'm going to grab a little more of a brush that will create the actual fur marks. So that's this one. And now I'm going to mix up, all right, I'll mix up an orange, a blue, cobalt blue, and orange. I can always grab I got a number of browns actually, so that's why there's a dark brown. Okay, so we got to be careful here, but I like to mix my browns. You could just grab, I mean, I do have some browns over here, I'll just maybe mix that in a little bit, but there we go. Now we do have to be careful, and I'm going to look at my color reference, hopefully it will come up. It's not going to easily come up. Okay, well, it's better to have a color photo handy too. I'm not seeing it, so. Alright, I got a nice brown here. I'm going to throw a little bit of that hazel yellow in there too, just to lighten it up a little bit. But now I've got, here's where I just got to be careful now. So here now I'm looking for the real, you know, those real furry marks. I'm using a rigger brush, long, and I'm just looking for where again those real darks are, and I'm going to actually try to create, you know, these little fur marks like that. Again, we get a dark in here. Get that dark right there, which has got some, up here we're getting those motions of the fur. There we go. there. Got this dark right there. We've got some fur like this. This edge is dark right there. Okay, let's finish these here. We've got nice little fur coming in here, little fur right there. Real dark right in here. Dark there. How's that? All right. All right, we got little furry guys. I'll stick a couple up above. Not trying to draw every fur here, but I do need to get a couple of these more predominant. There is a nice dark right in there. About over here, and a little dark there. I've also got below the eye hairs that are white. They're not, it's not white, it's like that. So just get that in there right away. Then I got the white. And which way is that fur moving? I'm trying to get that a little bit. Keep my edge.
What happens if my dad starts Tai Chi tomorrow?
How old is your father?
He is.
Okay, and then over here we definitely got, let me get that in here. Actually, here's where it's real dark. Got a little fur right there, little furry guys down here. These are kind of working this way. Some nice darks right there. So just kind of looking where those, again, where the darks are. I'm trying to draw every fur. Maybe a little bit in here. A nice dark right there, so I'm going to just press down on my brush on the little butt of it, and then we've got darks. Throw a couple little hairs kind of out that way a little bit. There we go. And just, all right, got a couple more there. Just working, as quickly as I can, but, and then I'll probably come back and add a few lighter ones as well. A bunch of, and then this area here is where we got to get dark there. And then underneath the white, we have some darks there. Get that colored in a little more right here. And we're almost to the point where it's like, okay, you gotta just get these in here, and then you gotta let it sit and kind of see and really look again where those lights and darks are, where there's some things you need to adjust. I do like what's going on there. So, as I'm doing this, my honest take is, I think the background, got a few more hairs kind of tabs that are working this way a little bit. So, you know, fur looks like it's going to be easy. It is not. It just isn't. You have to really look at which way it's moving. I mean, you don't want to draw every fur, but you need to get how it's moving. That is key. And it does move different ways at different spots. So, okay, I think that's pretty good. And I'm just looking here quick. I still feel like there's a couple of darks that need to get a little darker, but we've got a pretty nice piece. I feel though like, yeah, it's darker right next to this white. I'm just going to kind of pull that up there a little bit. There we go. And we got our little white area. I kind of like the way these look. Just create a little fur guy right out there a little bit. And then one of the things I can do is come back with a little white gel pen to get some of these whites here. This is still darker. I'll just add another layer of paint. It's real dark right in here. I probably will still come back once this is dry and still darken that even more, because you want to get, your eyes need to go there, 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 and then kind of maybe down here a little bit, and then there's these little areas in here that are pretty dark. But I think we're at the point where you kind of just let this sit. The one decision would be, you know, is this darker down here and darker in through here? Got a nice color back up in there, but we can darken the background, although some areas you kind of wanted to keep a little lighter. I have to decide down here, I guess, but I'm just going to let that sit for a little bit. So I think, again, overall, we got a nice composition here. I think overall it looks pretty good. And we let it sit for a little period of time so our eyes readjust and get away from it like 10 feet away so you can really see where the lights and darks are and where those darks need to be. All right, there is painting with a cat in about 40 minutes. People ask me all the time, how long does it take you to paint that? Well, in this case, it was about 40 minutes. Although I'll come back, but that's the main thing, that you let it dry and come back in. All right, I'm Coach Lance Meyer. Go to GRASMinistries.com to get more content and more Paint with Coach events. We're teaching, today I was teaching in Kentucky with the Zoom program and homeschool program, I should say, with Zoom. I've had a number of paint and sips. We got one coming up on December 20th. So check out the website. We'd love to have you join us for the next Paint with Coach event.